Okay, and it's recording.
And the call is being recorded. Okay.
Wait, let's start over here. We may be able to, so you want to record an intro that maybe we can put at the beginning of each podcast.
Yes.
And I was thinking in my head, we just need one introductory kind of podcast that talks about, that's just like first podcast, or basically like the background podcast. Because I like the idea of literally it just being our recorded phone calls.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of us talking about why we want to record our phone calls, or because I actually think most people want to record their phone calls in a way, because not most, a lot of people think that they have that one friend that's interesting enough. They have these great conversations that like everyone else would want to hear it. Or could get something from it. Maybe not want to hear, but get something from it.
Okay.
But I do think it's important to talk about our friendship. When we were talking about how we became friends in college 17 years ago at the University of Illinois.
Yeah.
And I actually like this do-over because I think that story was getting a little too detailed. I think it was a little maybe not interesting. I don't know. What do you think?
I thought it was kind of interesting because I think what I was about to say was like, I remember it slightly different, but not not meaningfully enough though. Like, because I don't remember, and we've talked about this before, but I don't ever remember anyone like talking. Like I found Lloyd, my cat, and I took him in, and I don't remember anyone else ever like feeding the cat or seeing the cat or anything like that. Anyways, that's the only thing. Well, okay, so the thing I'm thinking, I'm looking at my podcast right now. It's like some of them have like introductions, like some of them have like a little thing they play at the beginning of each podcast, and then they go right into it. And then some of them, like I'm looking at the podcast, like the sneaker podcast, like it's self-evident, but because it's called the Complex Sneaker Podcast, so they don't really need to explain it, and they just come in. They're like, "Hey everyone, I'm so and so. This is my co-host so and so, and today we're talking about so and so." Like, it's that simple. But you know, we could do whatever we want. We could just literally just start talking. Like, it's in the description. Like, it is what it is. I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there are a couple of reasons why I like the idea that we don't like to overly use the word curated. I used that word a lot the last podcast, but I don't want it to be too curated, because I do think like it's like we literally were just saying after our long rambling phone calls, we were like, yeah, that would be a cool podcast. We should just record it. And I almost think like it's funny. It's kind of funny to just record it, to not make it a thing, to literally just record it and put our phone calls up. And if people want to listen to it, they can.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I also like the idea of just doing it that way, because you are absolutely one of my oldest and best friends, and talking to you is very valuable to me. And I don't want calls with you to become a task.
Yes, 100%. I was thinking about that too.
Yeah. So I think to the extent that we could just keep our like conversations like super natural and just like talk and then put it up, and then we'll see what happens, you know, like if more people want to listen to it. I think
that's the strongest argument, like, because we don't want to make it an official thing, and we don't want to be like, because I was like thinking, I was like, oh, I don't want to get to the point where I'm like texting you like, what are we going to talk about this week, like what's on the agenda, like, you know. It should just be a natural thing. And you're right, like the very first podcast started because we were on the phone we've always talked about this, but like the last one we recorded last week was like we were literally talking to each other, and we're talking about how quarantine and all that, and we were just like, let's just do it. Let's do it right now. Let's just record it right now, and that's literally what we did.
And it was pretty good.
It was good, yeah.
I
listened to it later.
Yeah, it's funny. And I think one of the reasons why we thought that it would be a good idea to like do a podcast was because we end up having these conversations that are very topic driven, and we both gain enlightenment every time we go down these like topics, aka rabbit holes in conversation. Right. You know, we both really gain something from each other, and you know, and we make each other laugh. And so on these like rambling phone calls about like dating or betterment and growth and branding, as it turns out, or like comedy or what have you. Family. We talk a lot about everything. And if someone else can get something from it because we're making each other laugh and we're making each other better people, then why not?
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But again, yeah, I like the idea of talking a little bit about our friendship. Because again, one of the main reasons we think it could be beneficial is because we've been saying for a while now how interesting it is and how valuable it is to have a friend of the opposite sex who, a straight friend, or a maybe mostly straight friend of the opposite sex, to bounce ideas off when dating, because men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that it's so useful. So it is interesting. You and I, our long-standing friendship, like opposite sex friendship, because we've like lived together and we've and you were married and I was pretty much married, and we have these this long-term friendship that has been so valuable, but I think sometimes has to be explained,
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It is. And I think it's funny because this is really coming to because we both found ourselves single around the same time. So at the same time, you had been single for a while, you had been dating and going and picking in, and I had like you said, I was married, I was in a long-term relationship. And so mainly it was when I became single, lo and behold, you were also single for a period of time as well. And that was where it really became very obvious that there's one very explicit valuable aspect of this relationship, is that you as a woman, as like you said, a straight woman, that we're not in a relationship, we've never been in a relationship, we're just very, very good friends, and you know me so well because we've had such an intimate friendship over the years. You can tell me exactly what I need to hear. You're like my personal dating coach, because you know exactly how I am. You know what kind of girls I'm interested in. You know what kind of relationships I'm in. You've known all of my exes. You've known all of my friends. You know everything about me, and me too. I know all about your past relationships. I know about all your exes and everything. So we can kind of give each other insight into how this works. But so that's very practical. So we'll be talking to each other and be like, oh, look at this girl I was messaging on Hinge, and you'll be like, oh, don't talk to her, she sounds crazy, or or when I was doing my dating profiles, you were helping me write them. But that's just one very explicit example of this. We've been doing this our whole lives, helping each other, coaching each other, being the person with insight for the other person. I remember in college, one time I think I had just broken up with a girl or something. I was just feeling really down, and I said something, I'm like, man, why can't I get any girl to like me or something like that? And you said, just completely matter-of-factly, you said, Pat, everything you do is designed to drive women away.
Okay, you mentioned that the other day, and I said, I don't remember saying that to you. And you were like, oh my God, that was a pivotal moment in my life. So please tell me about this. I've been dying to hear about this because I don't remember saying this.
Well, I think because to you, I think it was just an observation to you. It was literally just you saying it's a nice day out. You were just saying, because at the time I was doing the craziest shit that I thought was cool. We both know there's things that I like that the rest of the world does not like, that I think is cool. I was wearing red pants and weird clothes and crazy sneakers and stuff, and I was just it was just I was not making myself very attractive. I was not presenting
I'm remembering this
person that I was not presenting my best aspects to the world. I was presenting my most outrageous and crazy and wacky aspects, and in that sense it was well, yeah, you're not going to attract many women when you're so like that. But to me, yeah, I don't know, it just that really, it was just like this honesty of it, and the fact that it came from you, because I guess at that point we had already kind of developed, I don't know, we've been friends for maybe like a year or so, or maybe like two, I think maybe two.
Yeah.
um I had just, I already trusted you so much. Like, you had already earned my trust. We'd already become like very close friends.
Yeah.
And for you to say that to me, it was just kind of like the hard truth that no one else had the balls to say. And I think you just said it because it was just like, it was just an
Did
observation
it
you were making.
did it hurt your feelings?
No, it didn't actually.
Okay.
And that's weird because at the time I'm a lot more confident and sure of myself now, but like at the time I was not. And I could see why, that potentially could have been very hurtful to me, but I don't remember it being hurtful at all. I think that if anything, I was more like sad because I kind of saw what you were saying and agreed with it, and I was like, oh, but I wasn't upset with you in any way. Hey, the cats
I
are.
feel like I remember this sentiment. I don't remember saying it, but I remember thinking it, right? And I think it wasn't
Yeah,
that it wasn't that like everything you did. I mean, I think I did say it matter of fact, but also kind of cheeky in the way that, like, of course not everything you did repelled women, but the way you um presented yourself, like you were saying, like you were like, I'm gonna be this wacky guy, and like it
right,
was all these not, but it was like opposite women things. Like it was like, I'm gonna be really into this thing that is so nuanced and kind of manly, masculine,
right,
that like, that again, not that, you know, the and I think at the time and you were trying to date, you were trying to like kind of play the field, and you tended to like be interested in women who were more like run of the mill, and you were so not run of the mill. But I think I
mm,
remember thinking either you need to go for the less, like, more nuanced women themselves that fit that niche that you're presenting, or stop only presenting the niche.
yeah.
I think that's
That
what it
makes
was.
sense.
And so I remember thinking that because you were very like niche market guy. Like,
Yeah. There's
yeah.
a photo from that period of time. Remember, there was one night when we were all, it was college. We all were like, we don't. I don't know what the kids do nowadays. I think they all just sit on TikTok all day. But like, we would all, every weekend, pretty much every night at some point was like, you literally, there was one apartment that everyone just kind of gravitated to, and like everyone just started slowly showing up, and for a while it was me and Colby's apartment,
Yeah.
because we had that nice place with the big tall ceiling. And I remember one night,
Yeah.
like, people started coming over, and it just happened to be like everyone was wearing a horizontal striped shirt, and we were like, oh my god, this is so funny. Every guy here is wearing like a horizontal polo shirt or t-shirt or sweater, and we were just like, oh my god, this is gonna be so funny. We're all gonna wear horizontal shirts tonight. And like everyone that had one was set. And then like I remember I went into my closet, like someone was like, oh, I don't have one. And I was like, wait, I'll get you one. And I went to my closet and I got one. And when you look at the photo, everyone looks totally normal. Everyone looks like a total normal snapshot of that day and age, which is basically like, an American Eagle like model. Like, very very generic. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what we looked like back then.
Yeah.
Um, except in the photo, I stick out like a sore thumb because I had like red hair, long. I had a goatee for some reason. I must have like thought that was interesting at the time, which is never a good look. And my horizontal striped shirt was like purple and black, and I was wearing like wristbands and shit. Like, I just looked like a fucking like Hot Topic nightmare. And, and I just like, I look back at that and now I'm like, yeah, of course, like no woman is going to be interested in me. I look like I'm trying so hard, but I think I was, though. I think that was the thing. I think I was trying really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Well, that's so funny because it's so funny that you bring up that story from back then, because it showcases actually how long we have been doing this for each other. And I didn't even think about that. I've only been thinking about, because, you know, in my head, you were married for, you know, so long that like, this is a new
10
thing,
years.
but no, you're right. Before you were married, we even had that kind of like, because you drew a comic strip in college that was very popular in the college newspaper. And so much so, like, our relationship was that of like advice and growth and sharing, was so much so that I was portrayed in the comic strip as the advice giving bartender.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. I'm
I
like
totally forgot that. I'm
realizing
remembering that now.
I never thought about that. I'm literally realizing things about our friendship that like I didn't know. I mean, I knew it, but I guess I would never have like thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, so after college, so we met each other like I think we met each other when we were on Daniel Street. So I think we knew each other for about 3 years in college, maybe 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3. Um, let's say 3.5. Let's split the difference. So that alone is like a significant time. But after college, we were close, and you moved in for a period. Like you were living outside of Chicago. I was living in Chicago, and you were going through a transitional period, and you're like, I'm gonna come to Chicago for a bit. And I specifically rented a 1.5 bedroom apartment, which is funny. I always remember they told me, they're like, oh, it's a 1.5 bed. And I'm like, does that even exist? Like, what were they trying to pull on me? It was basically like a closet.
Right.
Because I was like, oh yeah, well, someday Jeannie's gonna come live with me, and like, oh, so she can stay in this room.
Yeah.
But I remember one of our ill-fated conversations when you were single at that time too, and I found myself single, and once again we were like, we're both gonna be single, we're gonna both be living together, we're gonna like, you're gonna be dating that guy and I'm gonna be dating this girl, and we're gonna be like sharing like crazy stories, and
yeah, like, we're gonna help each other out.
Yeah, exactly. We were like, oh, this is great. We're gonna be like, you know, like an opposite gender, like Joey and Chandler from Friends. And then every time we say that, one of us ends up like getting into a relationship like immediately afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Because then that actually contributed. Yeah, because you're right. I was like, I'm gonna live in Chicago for a little bit, but then I was only there, I think, in that half bedroom, the closet that I lived in your apartment in Chicago, for like 8 months. Because then I moved to Portland because I was in a relationship that was like my first serious relationship with Stanley.
Yeah. So funny. Yeah, so we've been doing this for a long fucking time. And then we went through a period where we didn't live close to each other for a long time. Well, I mean, I guess that's kind of been always. Yeah. So from that was like the last time that we were kind of like in the same place at the same time. And so since then we've always just committed, like, you know, we've just had like a very strong friendship, like over phone and conversations, and that's like why we have conversations like this. But like, I always just remember like all the most pivotal points in my life, you were the first person I called. Aww. And I remember you calling me during the most pivotal points in your life. Like, I don't know if I was the first person you called, but I remember when you broke up with, I don't want to say names, but like the guy that you were seeing in Montana, which was like your way serious relationship. And I was driving home from work. I just bought a new car that had a Bluetooth speaker in it, so I could take phone calls like while I was driving. And I remember I answered the phone, and I was literally about to pull into my apartment garage, and you started telling me the story. And I went and parked next, like outside of my apartment, like on the street, because I didn't want to drop the call by going into the garage underground. And I think we sat there for like 2 hours. Like, aww. I was like me in my car, like with the car running, like just talking to you, because I didn't want to drop the call. So, aww. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Because I was probably just like bawling and blabbering at you.
Yeah. No, you know, it was a heavy moment, but yeah. So we've always been there for each other. We've always had these long conversations. We've always been helping each other out. We've always been giving each other advice. And then also, like, to take it to a lighter note, like you kind of touched on this last time, like we give each other advice on like fun stuff. Like I like wrote out a skincare routine for you, like when we were driving, when I stopped by on my way from Los Angeles to London. I remember saying like, oh, you got to do, because that was like when I was super into skincare, and I was like, or just getting into it. And I was like, here, I can help you. I can help you out.
Yeah.
So
well,
that's,
and things like it's so funny, and things, I mean, everything. We talk about everything from dating to life to just like, yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about self-betterment, like and like healing trauma and stuff like that.
100%.
Which is funny because I don't think we had the wherewithal to kind of have that like intentional conversation, in our 20s. And now we're just more aware and intentionally have those conversations. But I think we kind of de facto did in college and in our 20s, just by virtue of like talking about everything. You end up automatically, even if you don't intentionally want to talk about growth, you end up growing through those kind of conversations, and like diving into like, what do you think and why do you think that,
Yeah, and I think this kind of ties up to like something else that I've been really interested in lately. Was I'm really, I don't know, for some reason in my life right now, I'm just really fascinated with like people and like learning about people. I mean, maybe it's because I find myself single again, and like I'm dating, and I'm also like living in another country and experiencing things from like a different point of view. But like, I'm really fascinated by this, like the fact that like everyone thinks that what they do is normal and what everyone else does is abnormal. And I just love like talking to people and like kind of getting to know them and like asking them questions, like with the intention of finding out like what their normal is, because it's so different. And like,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll just, to put a button on that, I think that's like, that was college in a nutshell. Like, we went to a university in the States. This is for people that don't know. Big, massive university, 30,000 students, huge, in the middle of a very rural area. So like, if you were not affiliated with you, it's not like a university in New York or university in like San Francisco. This was like literally a university in the middle of nowhere. And you dropped in all these kids, from some of them from Chicago, some of them from Southern Illinois, and some of them from a handful of other places, like yourself and Kurt, and people that came from like, far away areas, and also foreign exchange students as well. And it was such a melting pot of different types of people. You could not have that experience of meeting someone different and learning about them and learning about yourself through that.
Like, that's so funny. I never thought about that. And like, how going to a big school that even though it's so big is isolated, like what a benefit that is to a young person in that way. Because I kind of thought about it like, this is craziness. Like, just put a bunch of kids in the cornfields and like, because I'm thinking about like the extensive drinking and drugs and sex and all that. But no, like it's so funny. I never thought about that benefit, because that's obviously a benefit in a big school or a medium-sized school in a big city, because by virtue of being in a bigger city, you're going to be exposed. But I think that there are so many colleges that are so niche that if a smaller college oftentimes is so niche that it's going to attract only a certain type of person. But this college was so big, and it's a good college, and so that it invited people, it attracted people from every single walk of life. And then you're on this island in the cornfields with people from every single walk of life, and you will interact with them. I never thought about that experience, that being a benefit of somewhere like the University of Illinois.
Yeah. And just look at our friendship group. Like I've made the joke before, or like maybe someone made it to me and I repeated it, but like, if you looked at my group of friends particularly, it's like, when you watch a movie like Cabin in the Woods or like one of those like teen sex comedies, and you're like, those type of people would never hang out. Like it's a group, it's always like a group of like 4 people, and there's like the nerd, the jock, the average guy that's like shy, and then like, you know, some weirdo or something like that. And you're like, those usually people congregate with someone that's very similar to them. Like you wouldn't ever see in reality a group of people so diverse. But like if you looked at my group of friends, it was so comical because we had such different types of people and personalities in that group.
That's
And
true.
like, you know, we had me. I was like wacky, artistic, like punk rock, emo,
Yeah, you were
cold
emo guy.
hair, with Mark, who's like the straight up like from Southern Illinois, not a farmer per se, but like very much from like an agricultural area, very much like traditional background, like almost conservative. I don't want to say anything disparaging, to like, you know, a guy who was a Muslim, and to a guy that was like a heavy metal fan, and like a guy that was a bodybuilder. Like it would literally look like a cartoon show. Like we're so
Which is
diverse.
why you drew the comic strip in essence.
Yeah, it was
And that's why
very.
the comic, I'm going to give you credit here. Like this is again a school of 30,000 people, and I think it's like it was like what, like 50,000 with the graduate school. We're just talking about the undergraduate. This is a school of
Yeah.
like 50,000 people, which is
was also about a, you know, there was also a reasonable amount of local people as well.
well, that's irrelevant to what I'm saying though right now. So
Okay.
this is a school of 50,000 people, and so that's, you know, that's a decent sized town, you know,
Right.
and so we had a newspaper that was widely circulated and lots of people read it, and it was actually a reputable newspaper of sorts. And your comic strip was by far, I think, the most popular, if not one of the most popular, but I think the most popular. Like people would cut it out and put it on their refrigerator.
Oh
Like
my
they
God,
wait
that
for
made
me
me
to see
so
it.
happy. When
What?
I'd go to someone's house, or like I'd go to like a store or something, I'd see my comic hanging up on the wall. I'd be like, ah, yes, made me so happy.
Right. And I think it's because you so again, going back to that fascination of just like humans and the diversity of thought. And when you put those people together and you start and they start learning from each other, not only the benefit that can come from it, but the humor that can come from it often,
Yeah.
you capitalize on that at a young age, like in college, and it made for really good comic strip. And yeah, that's so funny that here we are literally now talking about that thing that drove you to do that comic strip on our podcast, right? It's just
Yeah.
the amazingness of like the human experience. And when you start like when you put those people together and they start opening up to learn from one another from that perspective. But you're right, I think, to that point that you started off with, that when you first bring people together, they say, this is the way things are done. When in reality, what they mean is, from my perspective of the world, this is the way I have done this thing.
Right.
And that it's so funny that you have this renewed fascination with that. And I'm really excited to see what kind of shape that takes. Right?
Yeah. It's so funny. Just not to go backwards, but like I do think it's really funny to mention, like when people ask me, like when I describe my comic to people like that didn't know, and they'd be like, oh, what's it about? And I'd be like, it's really just me illustrating the stories that happened to me and my friends. Like that's really what it was. Like there was a loose narrative, there was characters, but like literally it was like, oh, this funny thing happened to Mark this weekend. I'm going to put that's going to be my comic for Monday. Oh, this funny thing happened to Jeannie this weekend. That's going to be my comic for Tuesday. This funny thing happened to Dave this weekend. Oh, that's going to be my comic for what? Like, it was literally just me taking those stories. It was almost like, you know, it was like a cheesy NPR series where I would just take stories from what was going on in every corner of this university and like illustrate it and put it into kind of a crude narrative. But
yeah. And I will say, it's called, funnily enough, I never thought about this too. It was called The Way Life Should Be, which is such a good title when you think about that theme that we're saying was there even then, and that is still part of our lives now and your life now. This underlying theme of like kind of the way life should be. It's almost cheeky, like saying that that's what everyone's saying. This is the way life should be. But
Right.
that you're saying, no, the way life should be is this way, where people are learning from each other and finding joy in these things.
Oh my
right?
God. This is crazy. There were so many things right in front of our noses that we never really took for granted. We never really thought too deep about it. It's so weird.
It goes to show kind of like, I think we're a lot, we were saying, I think last week or something, how we don't mind aging because every time we get older, we look back and we're like, oh, that was dumb. Like the thing that we did when we were younger. People in their 20s, they're dumb. People in their 30s, people in their 40s think are dumb, right? Because hopefully you get better with age and you get smarter. But I actually think this is proving to us that somewhere like our essential, like subconscious being actually, well, we know our subconscious actually is there to just keep us alive, right? But there's something in our internal knowingness that even in our dumb 20s was like an essential driver for us. Even if we didn't recognize it at the time, like now here we can look back as a person who's a little bit smarter and can formulate these thoughts and articulate them a little better. We can look back and say, oh, wow, that's what we were doing. But the fact that we were doing it showed that it was in there then too, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like I've been watching like a lot of Westworld lately and trying to get what? You've already eaten. Stop, you're ruining the podcast. Get out of here. I've been watching it, like it's almost like it's funny to think like your core programming was there all along.
Ooh.
Like which okay, cool. So here we go again. I know you so intimately. Like I know so much about you. I could describe like your core being. Like there's a lot of things that make you like there's like you're like a layer of onions, right? Or like an onion. Like there's your core middle part. That's like your really deep values. That's like, you know, the part of you that like that loves other people and like the things that like, you know, that you want, the things that like make you on your like a spiritual, emotional level. And then like the outer level, or like, you know, Jeannie likes the color blue. I don't even know if that's actually a color you like, but like, you know, those.
How well
like,
do you know me that?
The deeper you get, the more like meaningful these things are. And I think what we're kind of potentially saying is that like maybe that's always been there.
Yeah.
And it just grows and evolves over time.
Right. So like, yeah. So that like that your fascination with the melding of human experiences took its form as a comic strip in college. And then post-college, it took its form as stand-up comedy. And now it's taking its form is maybe this podcast and you're acting and maybe more comedy and writing and like all these.
Acting for sure. Because basically what you're doing is you're observing other people and imitating their actions. At least that's what I, you know, that's like how I act is like, you know, it's like method acting. If I wanted to know how to portray a drug dealer, I spend time with the drug dealer. I get to know them. I get to observe how they act, how they think, how they interact.
You want to embody their perspective in order to accurately portray them. Yes.
Yeah. And that's no different than what I was doing in the comic. Because when I wrote a comic about Kurt, I was writing in his quote unquote voice, like as him. I wasn't like, it's, you know, it was a very crude comic, but like, from my point of view, like my character, the character that was like supposed to be me, spoke in a different tone of voice than the character that was supposed to be Mark, that was supposed to be Rat, that was supposed
100%. To be. Yeah.
So interesting. Because so what I think is what's funny about this to me is I tend to feel, at least personally, that I am a very different person than I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I tend to feel like other people are too, because I look at people, you know, like, I don't want to give an example because no one listening to this besides you would even know what I'm talking about. But like, you know, you got this friend that was like, that's very different. Like you got the friend in college that like partied and was constantly drunk and never making his to class on time.
Yeah, I can think of those people. That now are like are great parents and have their stuff together. And like, you know, like you can
Exactly.
never see that
Exactly.
person now being that hot mess that they were back then.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I guess I look at that, but I think maybe what I'm kind of thinking about now is like maybe that was the external layers of the onion, like the
Yeah.
more superficial layers,
I sure
and
hope so.
the core was there all along. But I guess what's interesting is I only know, to use to continue the onion analogy, like I only know like your core person because we've been friends for so long and we've had such a deep friendship for all this years. Like
Yeah.
I think it makes me kind of sad to think that like there's some people that I only got to know like the outside layers of.
Oh, don't be sad about that. Like there's no way that you can have um too many of these like real deep friendships because they take time and effort and energy and like and and yeah, and sometimes just like yeah, I mean not that like our friendship takes a lot of effort, but it has
Boy,
taken.
does it.
What'd you say?
I said, boy, does it. No, I'm kidding. It's the most
um
effortless thing.
yeah, it is actually. But no, but you can't because it does like even like think about now we're in a pandemic, right? Think about the people that you are have in your head that you're like concerned about during a global
Yeah,
pandemic. If you
right,
had if you had innumerable, if you had literally hundreds of those people who you were intimately concerned about their day to day, you would malfunction. You would like
right,
short circuit, right? Now you
right,
can generally say, I am concerned for the magnitude of people out there who are suffering. But
right,
that takes saying like just the magnitude of people who are suffering takes the same energy as the one person who you actually need to call because you're concerned about their mental health or their financial well-being or whatever right now, right?
yeah, yeah,
um
yeah,
so but if you had all of those people, you cared about them equally, that would just you couldn't do it.
yeah. And that's kind of like the cliche thing is to say like, I'd rather have 10 great, strong friendships than like a
Right.
hundred acquaintances. And I think that's so
Well,
true.
I
So
mean,
true.
that's the thing. You don't have to have, and or you can have 10 strong friends and 100 acquaintances. Like that's
Yeah,
you
that's true.
probably do if you're an average social person. You know,
Right.
you probably do have hundreds of acquaintances and just 10 close friends. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, but there's no need to give them a hierarchy. Like that, these great friends are better because they all. It's a part of it's building an ecosystem of your life, right?
Yeah.
Like the what Malcolm Gladwell calls the loose ties are in bulk valuable,
Right.
and that's why they're loose, but in bulk,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the deeper ties that are valuable in their own right, but there's less of them.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. Hmm. I think, and like the cynical part of me, I know I've gone through like because I struggle with things every once in a while, and like I've gone through life, and like I've not been I've always kind of one of my problems I had is like I'm not really a terribly good friend, which I know sounds ridiculous because we're having this conversation about how you and I are such good friends, but like I'm a very good friend to some people, but like not to everyone. Um, and that's something I struggle with, and I kind of struggle to have those loose ties, so to speak, or I have in the past, and I've kind of like become a little bit more comfortable with it. I don't know exactly why, but like I don't know. I guess I was definitely like more like focused on like keeping like a core, like these two or three people I want to like, maintain my friendship with them. And I kind of disregarded everything else. And now I'm kind of like, it's kind of like, well, I guess maybe it was in a sense like the type of thinking that I was just saying, like, I'd rather have 10 close friends than 100 loose ones. And you said immediately, you can have both. Maybe I didn't realize that before because
Um,
I just look back on like my life and I think like I just never really cultivated those acquaintances. I focused all my energy on like my core, on like my very, very, very good friends. And I put all my energy into that.
okay, so I think this might be an example of when we do this very human thing of trying to find something that we're doing wrong for some reason, like trying to we need to create a reason to be disappointed in ourselves. So you being disappointed in yourself for not giving attention to something that by its very nature should not need that much attention is interesting if you look at it from that light, right? A loose tie or a casual acquaintance, by its nature of not being something intimate or deep, should not require you to give it that much attention. And the fact that you're upset with yourself for not doing that seems like something that you just kind of want to be upset with yourself about, because we do that as humans. We're like, how can I make myself feel guilty, because I should feel guilty about something and I haven't really explored that yet. So here's a reason to feel guilty, and we grab onto those things. But think about that. Just look at it from that perspective, right? Like you're I'm mad at myself for not giving enough attention to the things by their definition don't need attention or shouldn't need attention.
I should stop. I should stop beating myself up at night. I'm like, I lie awake in bed at night and be like, Daryl, he was so cool. Why didn't I maintain a friendship with him? I lost touch with Daryl.
But that's the thing. It's like, Daryl, if he was never like a good friend, then you should be able to message him on Facebook, or just like if you wanted to, but it doesn't sound like you really care. But if you think about him, you just send him a message on Facebook, or you like something on Instagram, because that is where he lives in your ecosystem. And beat yourself up over not bringing that more energy, or there can be people that you can say, I wish I would have fostered a deeper relationship with that person. Right. Then you can chalk that up to lesson learned. Next time that version of that person comes into your life, or you have an opportunity to reconnect with that person who you might have wished to foster a deeper relationship with, now you can remember, oh, that's the type of person I want to foster something deeper with. And you give that energy. But like to say, why don't I have a better acquaintance in so-and-so is by its very nature contradictory.
Yeah. Wow, how interesting. Another thing that was like right in front of our noses, but I didn't really think about. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because like that's one of the, it's almost like, again, here you are again. This takes us back to the whole beginning of this conversation. You are helping me by pointing out something that I could not see. It was right. It was something I was doing, and I just could not see why I was doing it. I was literally trying to, because I do this all the time, and I've been working on this for like years and years and years, trying to get over guilt and insecurities and regret and stuff like that, right? And I've been working very hard for years and years and years and doing it. But like, it's easier when you can say, oh, I regret this relationship, or I regret this thing that I did in my career, or I regret not moving to Hollywood when I was 18 and pursuing acting then. Like, those are very obvious things. I would have never thought about the fact that I was beating myself up for not giving acquaintances or loose threads like more energy than they even warranted in the first place.
Yeah. Do you see, when you say it, do you see how like, oh, I don't need that energy suck anymore. I can just get rid of that.
Yeah, exactly. But like, if it wasn't for you telling me this, if it wasn't for you pointing it out, because another thing that like in my personality, like, if like, ignorance is total bliss. Once you are aware of something, you must address it. So like, the example I always tell people, I'm like, if I didn't know cigarettes caused cancer, I'd be totally fine smoking cigarettes. But like, the second I know that cigarettes cause cancer, I no longer can let myself do that thing. And it's, it's not just things that are extreme like that. It's like, it's why, like, since I learned about how much plastic is in the ocean, I cannot allow myself to not recycle plastic. Or, since I found out, like, how bad like processed food is for my body, I can't eat junk food. Like, I just will not allow it. But
well, that's the thing. You can. And I think a lot of people. Oh, go ahead.
It took you pointing that out to me. So before it was something that I was unconscious of. Yeah, I was unconscious of. And now that you've pointed out to me, now it's going to be very easy for me to let it go. Next time I see a picture, like next time someone pops up on Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that, like someone that I haven't talked to in a long ass time, and I have that familiar feeling of like, oh, I should have treated them as more of a friend. I'll just be like, oh no, I'll remember what you said. And I'll be like, no, they were an acquaintance. I gave them all that they warranted, and it was fine. And I'm moving on, and I have no regret over this.
Yeah. Yeah, save that energy for something like that's more valuable for you and the world, the greater good of the world, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
That said, I do need to start wrapping this up. Because I need to go do things that are better, not better, this is good for me, but other things for the greater good of the world.
Okay, here's something to end on though, real quick.
Okay.
Going back to the beginning, you said that I was very like out there, and I was dating very like basically boring girls. I was like pursuing like basically like boring, like basic girls. Without naming any names, just give me a loose description of who you're referring to. I just think it'd be funny if you tell me who you thought was like.
So this was when you were like, because you've always had a certain type of girl that you typically like, but this was very much after, I think, a relationship, or you're trying to let go of like someone that you'd liked for a long time. And so then you were like, no, I'm going to date multiple women. You were kind of like, you were on one in this way. And I've always been someone who has lots of loose tie, lots of acquaintances that I do give kind of energy to, because that gives me energy. I'm an extrovert. So by giving my energy out to all of so I had lots of hot girl friends and acquaintances.
Yes,
so
you did.
So you were like all the girls that I was friends with who were hot, regardless of like who they were. You were just like, what about her friend? What about that friend? What about her? What about her? Like you had very little, you were not very discerning in who you liked. So that means it was just like all these girls, you were like, as long as she was good looking, you were like, yeah, how about I go for her? And I was just like that. I remember thinking like, you're either going after the wrong girl, or you got to change things up. Like, because the average hot girl at University of Illinois is not necessarily into Hot Topic guy.
Yeah, for lack of a better term, because I was not a Hot Topic guy. I was like, guy,
I know.
Hot Topic guy modeled himself on.
Yeah.
Guy.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're all they don't care. That's interesting. Yeah,
that's what I meant.
Yeah, I remember. I got a great bit of advice one time for I was going for my first job interview in college, like for a design company, and I asked my design teacher. I was like, "What do I wear like to the interview? Because like I'm a designer, I should be like cool. Like I don't want to walk in there like just looking boring or something." And he's like, "Well, you get more jobs if you dress more conservatively, but you'll get the better job that's right for you if you dress like more who you are." And I was like, yeah. Like, to take that to extreme, like if I walked in wearing a leather jacket, like 9 out of 10 design agencies would be like, oh, I don't know about that guy. But like there might be one agency that like does like punk rock, band posters and shit that's like, this guy's perfect.
Yeah,
so it's kind of the same thing with girls. It's like if I, Mr. Red hair with the goatee and the flat brim, multicolored baseball hat and the girl jeans and the sneakers with checkerboards on them, like walks up like, hey, 9 out of 10 girls are going to be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But like that one chick that's into that will be like super into it.
But that's your wife then, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I see the analogy. That's perfect analogy.
Potentially.
Yeah.
All right. Should we end on that?
Yeah, I'd like to maybe circle. I really liked this call. It's funny because I said, let's just talk about our friendship. And because, we wanted to say like, this is how we started this podcast. We were two friends who saw such value in conversations with each other that we thought maybe other people will find value or humor. And this was such a good example of that, actually. Even like the little rabbit hole we went down, I liked it.
Yeah, me too. I learned something. I learned something about myself, and I learned something about you, and I learned something about us.
I learned something about all of us. Kumbaya.
Kumbaya, indeed.
All right. Well, I love you.
I love you too.
And I will talk to you soon.
Okay.
I'll
Bye,
send you
friend.
this recording. Bye.
Bye.